My name is Melanie Irwin. 6 months ago, I walked away from a career that defined me for 2 decades. My sister called it career suicide. My former colleagues whispered about burnout. But when your mother is given 3 months to live, job titles suddenly seem very small. What I didn't expect was how my own sister would use my sacrifice to humiliate me in front of 200 wedding guests, including my son's CEO. What she didn't know was that her boss and mine were the same person, and he'd been trying to hire me back for months. The moment she called me an unemployed loser into that microphone, thinking she was impressing the most powerful man in the room, she had no idea she was actually talking to someone who knew exactly who I was and what I was worth. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Because what happened next didn't just change my career. It changed everything I thought I knew about family, success, and the price of keeping quiet. Let me take you back to where it all started. 6 months before Jake's wedding, I sat in the corner office I'd occupied for 5 years, staring at my resignation letter. Outside, Manhattan stretched endlessly, a view I'd earned through 60-hour weeks and missed family dinners. My assistant knocked. Another crisis with the Samsung campaign. Any other day, I would have jumped into action. But that morning, I'd gotten the call that changed everything. Stage 4, the oncologist had said about my mother's diagnosis. We're looking at months, not years. I submitted my resignation that afternoon. 20 years building a reputation as one of the best marketing directors in tech, managing budgets that could buy small companies. $50 million annually, to be exact. My campaigns had generated over 300% ROI consistently for 5 years. Numbers that opened doors, commanded respect, earned me offers from every major firm in the city. But none of those numbers mattered when my mother couldn't remember my name some mornings. Sandra's reaction was immediate and predictable. My younger sister had always measured her worth against mine, keeping score in some competition I never knew we were playing. When she heard I'd left my position, she couldn't hide her satisfaction. "So you're just done?" she'd asked at our mother's house that first week. "All that work, all those years climbing the ladder, and you're throwing it away to play nurse?" I was changing Mom's IV bag, something I'd learned from YouTube videos and a patient home care nurse. "It's called taking care of family, Sandra. It's called giving up." She adjusted her new Hermes bag, a gift to herself for her recent promotion to HR director at some tech company. "But I guess not everyone can handle the pressure of corporate life long term." That stung, but I let it pass. Sandra visited maybe once a week, usually during her lunch break, staying just long enough to take a selfie with Mom for her Instagram stories. "Family first," she'd caption them, before rushing back to her important meetings. The whispers started soon after. Former colleagues would text, asking if I was okay, their concern thinly veiling their curiosity about my apparent breakdown. LinkedIn connections wondered why I'd gone dark. Industry friends stopped inviting me to events, as if career suicide might be contagious. But every night, when Mom squeezed my hand and whispered, "Thank you for being here," I knew I'd made the right choice, even if it meant becoming invisible in the world I'd once conquered. Sandra's campaign to diminish me intensified as Jake's wedding approached. Every family gathering became an opportunity for her to highlight my new unemployed status while polishing her own achievements. "Melanie's taking a little break from the real world," she'd tell our cousins at Easter dinner, patting my shoulder condescendingly. "Some people just aren't built for the long haul." Meanwhile, I just got promoted to senior HR director. Did I mention our CEO personally requested me for the role? She hadn't just mentioned it. She'd announced it on Facebook, LinkedIn, and probably skywritten it somewhere. Her posts always included subtle digs. Success is a choice. Some people choose careers, others choose other things. Hashtag girlboss. Never settle. Corporate life. Our relatives started treating me differently. Uncle Robert, who used to ask my advice about his business, now directed his questions to Sandra. Aunt Patricia kept sliding job listings toward me at Sunday dinners. "Just in case you want to get back out there," she'd whisper, as if unemployment was a disease requiring discretion. The week before the wedding, I was at Mom's bedside when Jake stopped by after work. My son had inherited my strategic mind, but his father's kind heart, a combination that made him exceptional at reading people. "Sandra's been talking about you at the office," he said carefully, helping me adjust Mom's pillows. "Your office?" I kept my voice neutral. Jake worked as a software engineer at Tech Vision Corp, the same company where Sandra had landed her HR role. "She doesn't know we work in the same building, different departments." He paused, choosing his words. "Mom, she's telling people you had some kind of breakdown, that you couldn't handle the pressure anymore." I focused on checking Mom's medication schedule. "Let her talk. It's not right. You gave up everything for Grandma. That takes more strength than any job." Jake's voice carried the same protective tone he'd had since he was 5, defending me against anyone who dared criticize his mother. "Speaking of work," he continued, brightening slightly, "my new boss is coming to the wedding. David Chen. He specifically asked about the mother of the groom. Seemed really interested when I mentioned your background. I think he might have heard of you." I smiled at my son's attempt to cheer me up. "That's nice, honey." If only I'd known then that David Chen had more than just heard of me. But some revelations are better saved for the perfect moment. The morning of Jake's wedding, I stood in my childhood bedroom at Mom's house, holding the same pearl necklace she'd worn to her own wedding. She was having a good day, lucid, present, even managing to eat solid food. But I knew these windows were becoming rarer. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," she said from her wheelchair, her voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "Don't let Sandra get to you today." Even in her condition, Mom saw everything. "She's just insecure, you know. Always has been." "I know, Mom." I fastened the pearls, thinking about what I stood to lose if I let Sandra's narrative stand unchallenged. 20 years of reputation evaporated. The respect I'd earned from hundreds of professionals who'd be at this wedding, former clients, industry leaders, 3 CEOs from my contact list who Jake had proudly invited. They'd all hear Sandra's version. Melanie Irwin, former marketing director, current nobody, couldn't hack it, burned out, gave up. Worse, it could affect Jake. Office politics are brutal enough without your new colleagues thinking your mother is unstable. He'd just started at Tech Vision, eager to prove himself on his own merits. The last thing he needed was Sandra's poison spreading through his workplace. My phone buzzed with LinkedIn notifications I'd been ignoring for months. But one caught my eye. A connection update from an account I thought I'd deactivated. Strange. When I clicked through, my old profile showed recent activity I hadn't made. Someone had been viewing my accomplishments, downloading my portfolio pieces, studying my career history. "Melanie?" Mom's voice pulled me back. "Whatever happens today, remember what I taught you about quiet strength. Sometimes the best response isn't the loudest one." I kissed her forehead, promising to video everything for her. She was too weak to attend, but she'd made me promise to stand tall, smile bright, and remember that my worth wasn't measured in job titles. The wedding venue was 40 minutes away, a restored mansion on Long Island that Emily's parents had insisted on booking. As I drove there, I ran through possible scenarios. I could confront Sandra privately, but she'd deny everything. I could ignore her completely, but that would confirm her narrative to everyone watching. Or I could wait for the right moment to set the record straight. I didn't yet know that moment would choose itself, with 200 witnesses and a microphone that would change everything. The cocktail hour was in full swing when I noticed him. David Chen stood near the bar, surveying the crowd with the same analytical gaze I remembered from our video conferences 5 years ago. Back then, he'd been VP of operations at a startup, desperately needing someone to salvage their marketing disaster. I'd turned their company around in 6 months, leading to their eventual acquisition by TechVision for $200 million. He caught my eye and smiled, not the polite smile of a stranger, but the knowing look of someone holding cards they haven't played yet. Sandra materialized at my elbow, gripping my arm with her manicured nails. "Come on, there are people you should meet. Jake's colleagues are dying to meet his family." She steered me toward a group of young professionals, all holding drinks and making wedding small talk. I recognized the hungry look in their eyes, ambitious 20-somethings sizing up everyone's potential value to their careers. "Everyone, this is Jake's mother," Sandra announced, her voice carrying that false sweetness she'd perfected. "Melanie used to be in marketing, but she's taking time off now." "Oh, what company?" asked a young woman with a Tech Vision badge clipped to her purse. Before I could answer, Sandra jumped in. "She's between opportunities. You know how it is. Sometimes people just need to step back when things get too intense. Not everyone can maintain that corporate pace forever." I kept my expression neutral, but noticed David Chen had moved closer, now within earshot. He was pretending to study a wedding photo display, but I caught him glancing our way. That's when my phone vibrated. A LinkedIn message from an unnamed sender. "Check your email, DC." My heart skipped. The email was from last week, a formal offer letter from Tech Vision, Senior Vice President of Marketing Strategy, 300K base salary, plus bonuses. I'd turned it down without hesitation, explaining my family situation. David's response had been gracious but persistent. "The offer stands whenever you're ready." "Melanie?" Sandra's sharp voice cut through my thoughts. "Jennifer asked what you're doing these days." I looked at the group of eager faces, then at David Chen, who had moved even closer. The pieces were falling into place, but the board wasn't set yet. "I'm in transition," I said simply, focusing on what matters most. Sandra's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. "That's a nice way of saying unemployed." That's when I realized Sandra had no idea her CEO was standing 10 feet away. If you've ever been underestimated by family members who should support you, hit that like button. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to choose between career and family? What did you choose? I chose my mother, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. But what happened next at that cocktail hour made me realize that sometimes you don't have to choose at all. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss what happens next. Because trust me, the wedding reception is about to get very interesting. The group around us had grown larger, drawn by Sandra's increasingly loud voice. She was in her element now, performing for an audience she thought she controlled. "This is my sister," she said to each newcomer, her hand possessively on my shoulder. "She used to work in marketing. Used to be quite successful, actually. But you know how it is. Some people peak early." Jake appeared at the edge of the crowd, Emily in her stunning wedding dress beside him. His jaw was clenched, eyes flashing with anger. Emily placed a gentle hand on his arm, whispering something that made him pause. "What kind of marketing?" asked an older gentleman I recognized as a Fortune 500 executive. "Oh, the usual," Sandra answered before I could speak. "Nothing too impressive. She managed some campaigns, pushed some papers. Now she's, what do you call it, Mel? Exploring options?" She laughed, that tinkling sound that made my skin crawl. "That's corporate speak for unemployed." "Actually," I started, but Sandra cut me off. "The important thing is she's here for family now, even if it means giving up everything she worked for. Some people just aren't built for long-term success. But hey, someone has to be the cautionary tale, right?" The crowd shifted uncomfortably. A few people excused themselves, but others leaned in, sensing drama. I noticed one young man recording on his phone, probably for social media. Perfect. David Chen had moved into my direct line of sight now, standing just behind Sandra. She still hadn't noticed him, too caught up in her performance. "I mean, I've been promoted 3 times in 2 years," Sandra continued, adjusting her designer dress. "Just last month, our CEO personally selected me for a special project. David Chen himself said I represent the future of TechVision's leadership." I almost laughed. Behind her, David's eyebrows rose slightly. "But not everyone can handle that pressure," Sandra said, patting my arm condescendingly. "When Melanie resigned for personal reasons, I knew she'd never work again. Who's going to hire someone who abandoned a 20-year career? It's career suicide." "Sandra, Jake's voice cut through, sharp with warning. What? I'm just being honest. Your mom knows I love her, but facts are facts. She's unemployable now. That's when I saw David Chen pull out his phone, typing something quickly. A moment later, Sandra's phone buzzed. She ignored it, too busy enjoying her moment in the spotlight. The universe was aligning perfectly. You know what the saddest part is? Sandra's voice had taken on a philosophical tone, as if she were delivering a TED Talk on failure. She threw away a $50 million budget for what? To play nurse? Any home aide could do what she's doing, but only Melanie could have done what she was doing in marketing. What a waste. The crowd had grown to about 30 people now, including several of Jake's colleagues from TechVision. They looked uncomfortable but fascinated, like drivers passing a car accident. That's enough, Aunt Sandra. Jake stepped forward, his voice firm. Oh, honey, I'm just trying to help your mom face reality. She needs to hear this. Denial isn't healthy. Sandra turned back to me, her eyes glittering with barely concealed triumph. Tell them, Mel. Tell them how you haven't even updated your LinkedIn in 6 months, how you don't return recruiters' calls, how you've completely given up. My phone buzzed. Another message from DC. Want me to handle this, or would you prefer to? I typed back quickly. Let her finish digging. The truth is, Sandra announced, gesturing dramatically, my sister is a cautionary tale about women who can't maintain work-life balance. She cracked under pressure, pure and simple. And now, at her own son's wedding, she's just another unemployed, middle-aged woman trying to seem relevant. That's when David Chen started walking over. Sandra, still oblivious, continued. Unlike some people, I've never let family obligations interfere with my career. That's why David Chen, our CEO, personally mentors me. He says I remind him of himself at my age, focused, driven, not distracted by taking care of dying parents. David's voice was calm, conversational. Sandra spun around, her face cycling through expressions. Surprise, delight, then confusion, as she realized he'd heard everything. Mr. Chen, I didn't know you were here. This is perfect. I was just telling everyone about you. This is my sister, the one I mentioned, the unemployed one. David's smile didn't reach his eyes. Yes, I heard your introduction. Very thorough. Sandra beamed, missing the danger in his tone. I know you value honesty and transparency. I thought everyone should know the real situation, not some sugar-coated version. Oh, I absolutely value honesty, David said, pulling out his phone again. In fact, I think this is the perfect time for some transparency. The crowd pressed closer. Jake's hand found mine, squeezing gently. The moment we'd all been waiting for was finally here. David Chen stood perfectly still, his presence commanding the attention of everyone within earshot. Even the band seemed to quiet down, as if sensing the shift in atmosphere. Before we continue, he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to boardrooms and billion-dollar decisions, I should mention that I've been trying to reach Melanie for weeks. Sandra's smile flickered. Reach her? Why would you? Last month, I offered her the position of Senior Vice President of Marketing Strategy at TechVision, $300,000 base salary plus bonuses. He let that sink in for a moment. She turned me down. The crowd collectively inhaled. Sandra's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. That's impossible, she stammered. She's unemployed. She quit her job. She's been out of work for 6 months. She left her position to care for her terminally ill mother, David corrected, his tone sharp enough to cut glass. There's a significant difference between giving up and choosing what matters most. He turned to address the growing crowd, his voice carrying clearly. 5 years ago, Melanie Irwin saved my previous company from bankruptcy. She took our disaster of a marketing department and turned it into a machine that generated 300% ROI, consistently, for 5 consecutive years. Sandra's face had gone pale. But she's not working now, because she's declined multiple offers, including mine. Last week alone, she turned down positions from 3 Fortune 500 companies. David pulled up something on his phone. I have the emails right here. Goldman Sachs, Microsoft, and yes, Tech Vision, all rejected because she's prioritizing her mother's end-of-life care. The crowd was dead silent now. Someone had definitely started recording. I could see multiple phones pointed our way. But that's not even the most interesting part, David continued, his eyes fixed on Sandra. Do you know why I'm at this wedding, Ms. Morrison? Sandra shook her head mutely. Jake Irwin is one of our most promising engineers. When he mentioned his mother's background, I recognized the name immediately. Melanie Irwin is a legend in our industry. Her campaigns are still taught in business schools. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. So, imagine my surprise when my own HR director, someone who reports to me, stands here calling her sister unemployable and a failure. Sandra's hands were shaking now. Mr. Chen, I didn't know. I mean, I was just violating our company's code of conduct regarding professional behavior and respect. The trap had been set perfectly, and Sandra had walked right into it. The revelation hung in the air like a sword waiting to drop. Sandra's carefully constructed superiority was crumbling in real time, visible to everyone she'd tried to impress. There must be some misunderstanding, she said, her voice climbing higher. I didn't know about any offers. Melanie never told me. Why would she? David interrupted. You've spent the last 6 months telling everyone she's a failure. You've posted on social media about choosing career over family. You've used her sacrifice as a stepping stone to elevate yourself. He pulled up his phone again, scrolling through something. Interesting Facebook post from last Tuesday. Some people choose success, others choose excuses. Grateful to work for a CEO who values ambition over emotion. Hashtag Tech Vision proud, hashtag career first. Several people in the crowd gasped. Jake's colleagues from Tech Vision exchanged knowing looks. They'd all seen Sandra's posts. That wasn't about Melanie specifically, Sandra tried to backtrack. Really? Because the comments suggest otherwise. Your cousin asked if you were talking about your sister, and you replied with a laughing emoji. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from someone named Jennifer Liu, the young woman who'd asked about my work earlier. Your sister has been bad-mouthing you at the office for months. We all knew something was off. David's been looking into it. The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't just about tonight. David had been building a case. Here's what's going to happen, David said, his voice taking on the tone I remembered from high-stakes negotiations. Ms. Morrison, you're going to step away from this wedding reception. You're going to think very carefully about your behavior and how it reflects on Tech Vision's values. You can't threaten me at a family wedding. Sandra's voice was desperate now. I'm not threatening anyone. I'm simply clarifying expectations for professional conduct. Our employee handbook, which you oversee as HR director, clearly states that behavior reflecting poorly on the company, even outside work hours, is grounds for review. The wedding coordinator appeared, drawn by the commotion. Is everything all right here? Just a bit of family business being resolved, David said smoothly. Actually, could you bring a microphone? I'd like to make a toast to the bride and groom. Sandra looked like she might faint. The crowd parted as the coordinator hurried away, returning moments later with a wireless microphone. David took it with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I think it's time everyone knew exactly who Melanie Irwin really is. The microphone feedback squealed briefly, drawing the attention of all 200 guests. The dance floor cleared as people sensed something significant was happening. Good evening, everyone, David's voice boomed through the speakers. I'm David Chen, CEO of Tech Vision Corporation, and I'm honored to be here celebrating Jake and Emily's special day. Polite applause rippled through the crowd. Sandra stood frozen beside me, her face the color of ash. But I also want to take a moment to address something I just witnessed, something that speaks to values, family, and what real success looks like. He turned to face me directly. 6 months ago, Melanie Irwin walked away from one of the most successful marketing careers in our industry. Not because she failed, not because she couldn't handle the pressure, but because her mother needed her. The room was silent except for the soft clink of glasses being set down. For those who don't know, Melanie managed $50 million annual budgets. Her campaigns generated over 300% ROI for 5 consecutive years. She's the architect behind the marketing strategy that helped my previous company sell for $200 million. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Jake's colleagues were staring at me with new recognition. The Fortune 500 executive from earlier was nodding, as if pieces were falling into place. Last week, David continued, I offered her $300,000 a year to join TechVision. She declined. Not because she's unemployable, as her sister just announced to 30 people, but because she's caring for her dying mother. Sandra made a sound like a wounded animal. Please, Mr. Chen. He held up his hand, silencing her. Ms. Morrison, you've spent the evening telling everyone your sister is, and I quote, an unemployed loser who couldn't handle corporate life. You said she's a cautionary tale and career suicide. The crowd collectively turned to stare at Sandra. Someone in the back whispered, She said that about her own sister? You did this while representing yourself as a leader at TechVision. You invoked my name, claiming I mentor you personally, which for the record, I do not. Emily's parents looked horrified. Jake's groomsmen were recording everything. The wedding photographer had even started taking pictures of the scene. So let me be crystal clear, David said, his voice carrying the weight of final judgment. Melanie Irwin is not unemployed, she's not a failure. She's a woman who chose love over money, family over fame, and that makes her worth more than any title or salary could measure. But he wasn't done yet. However, David continued, the microphone picking up every word with crystal clarity, Sandra Morrison, you've demonstrated values completely antithetical to what TechVision stands for. Publicly humiliating family members, especially one caring for a dying parent, shows a lack of empathy that's incompatible with HR leadership. Sandra's legs seemed to give out. She grabbed a chair for support. You can't do this. Not here. Not at my nephew's wedding. You chose the venue when you decided to publicly shame your sister, David replied. You created this moment. I'm simply providing accurate information. He turned back to the crowd. Melanie Irwin represents the best of corporate leadership, someone who knows that true success isn't measured only in dollars and titles, but in the lives we touch and the choices we make when no one's watching. Mr. Chen, please, Sandra's voice cracked. I didn't mean. You meant every word. You've been spreading this narrative for months, according to multiple TechVision employees. You've created a hostile environment for anyone who might need family leave. You've demonstrated that you view caregiving as weakness. He pulled out his phone one more time. I have here a termination letter, effective immediately. Security will escort you to clean out your desk on Monday. The crowd erupted in whispers. Sandra's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of humiliation, of being caught, of losing the status she'd lorded over everyone. This is illegal, she shrieked. You can't fire me for personal conversations. I'm firing you for violating TechVision's code of conduct, creating a hostile work environment, and misrepresenting your relationship with executive leadership. The fact that you did it while humiliating someone I've been trying to recruit for months is just particularly poor judgment. Jake stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. Aunt Sandra, I think you should leave. You set this up! Sandra pointed at me, her voice hysterical. You planned this! You knew he'd be here! I finally spoke, my voice carrying the same calm authority I'd used in 1,000 boardrooms. I didn't plan anything, Sandra. I didn't need to. You wrote this ending yourself, one cruel word at a time. David handed the microphone back to the wedding coordinator. Now, I believe we have a celebration to return to. But first, he turned to me with a genuine smile. Melanie, that offer still stands, though I have a feeling you might have something even better in mind. He was right. I did. Can you believe Sandra would do this at her nephew's wedding? If you're still watching, you're about to witness one of the most satisfying professional comebacks ever. Before we continue, quick question. What would you do in this situation? Would you take the job offer or would you do what I did? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to see more stories about professional karma and standing up to family bullies, make sure you're subscribed. The next part is where things get really interesting. The silence that followed David's offer was deafening. 200 guests held their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Sandra stood frozen, mascara running down her cheeks, her designer dress now seeming like a costume that no longer fit. "Before you go, Sandra," David said, his tone professional but final, "please hand over your company phone and laptop to Jake. He'll ensure their return to IT on Monday." "This is a nightmare," Sandra whispered, but she reached into her purse with shaking hands, pulling out the latest iPhone with the Tech Vision case. Jake took it without a word. Security from the venue, two discreet men in suits, had appeared at the ballroom entrance. They didn't approach, but their presence was clear. Sandra saw them, and her shoulders collapsed. 20 years, she said to me, her voice broken. 20 years I've lived in your shadow. Even when you quit, even when you had nothing, everyone still talked about the great Melanie Irwin. That was your issue to work through, I replied quietly. Not mine to fix by failing. David cleared his throat, commanding attention once more. Now let me properly introduce someone. Melanie Irwin isn't just a marketing legend. She's the person who saved my company when everyone else said it was impossible. She took a startup hemorrhaging money and turned it into an acquisition target worth $200 million. The Fortune 500 executive from earlier stepped forward. Melanie? Melanie Irwin from the Samsung partnership? My God, I've been trying to poach you for years. Suddenly, the dam broke. People surged forward, not toward Sandra, who was being quietly escorted out by security, but toward me. Business cards appeared from every direction. Job offers were being shouted over each other. I need someone to head our global marketing division. We're launching in Asia and need strategic leadership. Name your price, seriously, whatever you want. David raised his hand, and the crowd quieted. As I said, I've already made Ms. Irwin an offer. 300,000 base, plus bonuses, full benefits, and unlimited family leave to care for her mother. I'll double it, someone called out. Triple, another voice added. Jake was beaming, Emily clutching his arm with tears in her eyes. Happy tears. This was their wedding, but they seemed thrilled to share this moment of vindication. David turned to me with a knowing smile. Though something tells me you have bigger plans than working for any of us. He was right. I pulled out my own phone, opening an email I'd drafted that morning. Actually, Mr. Chen, I've been thinking. After 20 years of building other people's companies, maybe it's time I built my own. The crowd leaned in, hungry for what came next. I'm launching Irwin's Strategic Consulting next month. Boutique firm, selective clientele, focused on companies that value both performance and people. David's smile widened into something genuine, the first real warmth I'd seen from him all evening. A consulting firm. Of course, that's exactly what you'd do. And I assume, he continued, loud enough for everyone to hear, you'll need anchor clients to launch, companies with substantial budgets who trust your expertise. I met his gaze steadily. I'm being selective. I only work with organizations that align with my values. Companies that understand success isn't just about the bottom line. Then TechVision would like to be your first client, David announced. $2 million initial contract renewable annually. We need someone to overhaul our entire marketing strategy, especially our corporate culture messaging. The crowd gasped. Someone dropped a champagne glass. Especially, David added with pointed emphasis, our HR and internal communications. Seems we have some toxic culture issues to address. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Sandra's position, her entire department, would now be restructured by the sister she'd called unemployable. That's generous, I said carefully. But I have conditions. David laughed. Actually laughed. Of course you do. First, I work remotely. My mother needs me, and that's non-negotiable. Second, I choose my team. No corporate interference. Third, I wanted in writing that family caregiving is never counted against any employee's performance or advancement. Done, done, and done. David pulled out his phone. I'll have legal draft it tonight. The Fortune 500 executive stepped forward. If you're taking clients, Morrison Industries wants in. 3 million, same terms. Jacobson Tech, 2.5 million, another voice called. Wellington Partners, $4 million contract. Within 5 minutes, I had $12 million in verbal commitments. My phone was recording everything: names, companies, amounts, from unemployed to 8-figure business owner in the span of a wedding toast. Jake broke from the crowd and wrapped me in a hug. Mom, this is incredible. This is your day, sweetheart, I whispered. I'm sorry it got hijacked. Emily joined our embrace. Are you kidding? Our wedding just became legendary. People will talk about this for decades. She was right. The photographer was capturing everything. The videographer had abandoned the dance floor to document this moment. Tomorrow, the business world would be buzzing with the story of the woman who turned public humiliation into a multi-million-dollar launch. One more thing, David said, raising a fresh champagne glass someone had handed him. A proper toast. To Jake and Emily. May your marriage be as strong as your mother's character. And to Melanie Irwin, who reminds us that sometimes the biggest risk is playing it safe, and the greatest strength is knowing what really matters. 200 glasses raised in unison. To Jake and Emily! To Melanie! As I sipped my champagne, I thought of Mom, watching from her bed. She'd been right about quiet strength. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's just success. The rest of the reception reorganized itself around this new reality. Sandra's empty seat at the family table became a silent testament to consequences. The wedding coordinator, a consummate professional, had quietly removed her place setting and adjusted the seating as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. Something seismic. Within an hour, I'd signed 3 contracts on napkins, legally binding according to the corporate lawyer who happened to be Emily's uncle. David had his assistant, who lived nearby, drive over with official TechVision letterhead. By the time the cake was cut, Irwin Strategic Consulting had its first 3 clients and $6 million in guaranteed revenue. Mrs. Irwin, a young woman approached hesitantly. It was Jennifer Liu from earlier. I'm so sorry about before. When your sister was talking, we should have said something. You didn't know, I replied graciously. But we suspected. She's been toxic at work for months, always putting people down, especially working mothers. She wrote up one woman for leaving early to pick up a sick child, even though the woman had worked through lunch. Another TechVision employee joined us. She denied my father's bereavement leave when my grandmother died, said it wasn't immediate family according to policy. But she took a week off for her dog's surgery, someone else added. The pattern was clear. Sandra had wielded her small power like a weapon, hurting anyone who reminded her of her own insecurities. That ends now, David said, rejoining our group. Part of your consulting contract, Melanie, will be reviewing and revising our entire HR policy, making it more human. I nodded, already mentally drafting changes. Family first can't just be a slogan, it has to be policy. Speaking of family, Jake appeared with his phone. Grandma's on FaceTime. She wants to see you. I took the phone, seeing Mom's tired but smiling face. Hi, sweetheart. I've been watching through the live stream. I'm so proud of you. Mom, No tears, she said firmly. This is a celebration. You stood up for yourself without stepping on anyone. That's the daughter I raised. Around me, the wedding continued. The band played, people danced, Jake and Emily glowed with happiness. But in our corner, a new chapter was being written. Business cards piled up on my table. LinkedIn notifications exploded on my phone. By midnight, Irwin Strategic was trending in business Twitter circles. You know Sandra will try to spin this, David warned quietly. She'll claim wrongful termination, discrimination, something. Let her try, I said. 200 witnesses, plus video evidence of her behavior. Besides, I don't plan to mention her again. She's written herself out of my story. And I meant it. Sandra had chosen her path. Now I was choosing mine. As the evening wound down, I found myself at the head table, signing contracts between wedding toasts. Emily's father, the corporate lawyer, had pulled up standard consulting agreements on his tablet, modifying them in real time. I need 3 client references, I told David as he prepared to sign the TechVision contract. He laughed. You're negotiating against yourself. We came to you, remember? Standards don't change based on circumstances, I replied. If I'm going to do this, I'm doing it right. David provided the references immediately. 3 CEOs who'd worked with TechVision and would vouch for their professionalism. Within minutes, I had glowing texts from all 3. One more thing, I added. Working hours. I'm available Monday through Friday, 9 to 3. Evening calls by appointment only, scheduled 48 hours in advance. Weekends are for my mother, no exceptions. That's only 30 hours a week, someone pointed out. And I'll deliver more in those 30 hours than most do in 60, quality over quantity. David signed without hesitation. Honestly, your terms should be the standard, not the exception. Morrison Industries signed next, then Jacobson Tech. Each contract included my non-negotiables, remote work, flexible hours, complete autonomy over strategy, and a clause that specifically protected family caregiving time. You're reshaping corporate consulting in real time, Emily's father marveled. This is unprecedented. No, I corrected. It's overdue. Jake and Emily performed their first dance to At Last by Etta James. As I watched my son hold his new wife, I thought about all the first dances I'd missed while building someone else's empire. The school plays attended by nannies, the bedtime stories told by his father alone while I worked late. Never again. Melanie, David appeared beside me. There's something else. Sandra's position. We'll need to fill it immediately. Do you have recommendations? I thought of Jennifer Liu, who'd shown integrity tonight. Of the employee who'd been denied bereavement leave. Of all the people Sandra had stepped on. Promote from within, I suggested. Someone who's experienced the current culture and wants to change it. Jennifer Liu would be my choice. Consider it done. As the band shifted to upbeat music and the dance floor filled, I stepped outside for air. The October night was crisp, stars visible despite the Long Island light pollution. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Sandra. I deleted them without listening. Tomorrow, I'd file the LLC paperwork for Irwin Strategic Consulting. Tonight, I'd dance at my son's wedding, video call my mother, and celebrate not just a marriage, but a rebirth. Sandra had called me unemployable. By Monday, I'd be her former company's highest-paid consultant. Sometimes the best revenge really is massive success. Monday morning arrived with a flurry of activity I hadn't experienced in 6 months. But instead of commuting to a Manhattan high-rise, I was setting up my laptop at Mom's kitchen table, her oxygen machine humming softly in the background. By 9 a.m., Irwin Strategic Consulting was officially incorporated. By noon, the contracts had been formalized, reviewed, and deposits transferred. $2 million from TechVision hit my business account while I was feeding Mom lunch. 6 months ago, you had everything, Mom said weakly, squeezing my hand. Now you have everything that matters. The news had already spread through the industry. My LinkedIn exploded with connection requests, congratulations, and inquiries about availability. 3 separate business journals requested interviews. Forbes wanted to do a piece on the rise of compassionate consulting. Sandra's termination had also made waves. TechVision issued a statement about restructuring to better align with corporate values. Jennifer Liu was promoted to interim HR director with a mandate to overhaul the entire department. First order of business, Jennifer told me during our initial call, is implementing your family-first policies, unlimited caregiving leave, flexible hours for parents, mental health support, everything Sandra blocked. Jake called during his lunch break. Mom, you're legendary at the office. Everyone's talking about Saturday night. Also, 3 more companies called asking for your contact information. I'm booked solid for the next year, I told him, but I'll keep a waiting list. That afternoon, while Mom napped, I drafted my first strategic report for Tech Vision. It was scathing. Their corporate culture was toxic, their messaging hypocritical, their employee retention abysmal. Sandra had been a symptom, not the disease. This will take 18 months to fix, I told David during our video call. And it starts with leadership acknowledging the problems. Whatever it takes, he agreed. Saturday night was a wake-up call. If we have employees like Sandra in leadership, what does that say about us? By Friday, Irwin Strategic had 6 employees, all remote, all parents or caregivers, all brilliant professionals who'd been pushed out of traditional corporate structures. We met virtually during school hours, delivered exceptional work, and still made it to soccer games and doctor's appointments. The first month's revenue exceeded my entire previous annual salary. But more importantly, I hadn't missed a single moment with Mom. I was there for her bad days and good ones, her confusion and clarity, her fear and peace. You know, Sandra applied to work here, my assistant mentioned during our Friday check-in. I know, I replied. I forwarded her resume to a competitor. Everyone deserves a second chance, just not from me. Professional boundaries, the most important lesson Sandra never learned. 3 months later, I sat in Mom's hospice room, laptop balanced on the bedside table, leading a virtual board meeting for Morrison Industries. Mom was having a good day, alert enough to listen and occasionally smile at my professional voice. The third quarter projections exceed expectations by 40%, I reported, sharing my screen with 12 executives. The campaign resonated because it was authentic, your employees' real stories, not manufactured corporate speak. Melanie, this is remarkable, the CEO said. How did you identify these stories? I listened, something my sister never learned to do. After the meeting, I held Mom's hand while she dozed. The hospice nurse, paid for by my new income, adjusted her medications with practiced gentleness. Every penny I earned meant better care for her, more comfort in her final journey. My phone buzzed. An email from Sandra. Melanie, I know you won't respond, but I need to say this. I was wrong. I was jealous, insecure, and cruel. Losing everything taught me what you already knew. Success without family is just emptiness with a title. I'm working at a small firm now, entry level, starting over. Your referral got me the interview. Thank you for that grace I didn't deserve. Mom would be proud of you. You chose love, Sandra. I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either. Forgiveness would come eventually, but trust was gone forever. That evening, Jake and Emily visited, bringing wedding photos. In every shot from the reception, you could see the moment things changed. Sandra's shock, David's revelation, my quiet triumph. But the best photo was later, just family, -1, laughing at the head table. No regrets? Jake asked, studying my face. None. I have my own company, set my own terms, and haven't missed a single day with Grandma. Your aunt gave me a gift, actually. Her cruelty forced me to stop playing small. 2 weeks later, Mom passed peacefully, holding my hand. I was there because I could be. Because I'd chosen to be. Because no contract, no meeting, no amount of money was worth missing that moment. At her funeral, Sandra sat in the back row. We made eye contact once. I nodded. Acknowledgement, not forgiveness. She'd lost the right to grieve with family when she'd tried to destroy it. But I had work to do. Mom's medical bills were covered. Jake's student loans were paid off. Emily's parents' struggling business got a silent investor. Success wasn't just the best revenge. It was the best way to honor Mom's sacrifice in raising us, even the one who'd lost her way. 1 year after the wedding, Irwin Strategic Consulting occupied 3 floors of a Manhattan building, not that I ever went there. My team of 42 remote professionals ran operations while I worked from my new home office, a sun-filled space overlooking the garden Mom never got to see me plant. The company was valued at $30 million. We had a waiting list of clients stretching 2 years out. Harvard Business School had made our founding a case study in disrupting traditional consulting through values-based leadership. But the real success was smaller, quieter. It was Jennifer Liu calling to say TechVision's employee satisfaction had jumped 60% after implementing our recommendations. It was the 3 single mothers I'd hired who could now afford quality childcare while working flexible hours. It was Jake telling me he was proud to share my last name. "We have a situation," my COO mentioned during our Monday video call. "Sandra Morrison has been promoted to VP at her new company. They want to hire us." I sat back, considering. Sandra had rebuilt her career through genuine hard work, no shortcuts, no manipulation. She'd even started a blog about redemption and second chances that had gained a modest following. She never mentioned me by name, only referring to the sister who taught me my greatest lesson. "Take the meeting," I decided, "but I won't lead the account." The meeting happened without me, but I watched the recording later. Sandra presented professionally, competently, without a trace of her old arrogance. When asked about her experience with corporate culture transformation, she said simply, "I learned the hard way that toxic leadership destroys more than just careers. It destroys families." We took the account, not for Sandra, but for the employees who deserved better. The contract included our standard family-first policies, which Sandra championed enthusiastically. Ironic, but growth often is. 6 months later, at Jake and Emily's pregnancy announcement dinner, Sandra was notably absent from the family celebration. She'd sent a gift and a note. "Congratulations, I'm respecting the boundaries I should have honored from the beginning. Love always, S." It was the first thing she'd done right in years. "Do you miss her?" Jake asked, noticing me looking at the card. "I miss who she could have been," I admitted, "but I don't miss who she was." That night, I drafted an email I'd never send. "Sandra, your public humiliation gave me the push I needed to stop playing by rules that were never written for women like us. Women who choose family, who refuse to apologize for having priorities beyond profit. You thought you were exposing my weakness. Instead, you revealed my strength. Every cruel word became fuel. Every insult became inspiration. I have everything now. The career, the flexibility, the financial freedom, and most importantly, the knowledge that I was there when Mom needed me. Can you say the same? Success isn't the best revenge. Living authentically is. And thanks to you, I finally am." I deleted the draft, but kept the lesson. Some bridges are meant to burn. They light the way forward. Tomorrow, I'd review proposals from 6 new clients. I'd have lunch with Jake. I'd visit Mom's grave with fresh flowers. I'd live the life Sandra had mocked, and I'd thrive in it. Because the best response to someone calling you a failure? Succeed so brilliantly they become a footnote in your success story. And Sandra? She was barely a comma now. That's my story of how my sister's attempt to humiliate me became my biggest business opportunity. If you've made it this far, you're amazing. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Have you ever had family members underestimate your choices? Share your story in the comments below. And if you want to hear about the time Sandra tried to poach my biggest client and ended up getting herself blacklisted from the entire industry, well, that's a whole other story. Let me know if you're interested. Remember, your worth isn't determined by your job title, but by the lives you touch and the choices you make when it matters most. See you in the next video.